Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Inspiring Thoughts podcast today. Delighted to have Claire Thorpe with us, who's a coach and HR consultant. So, Claire, delighted to have you on board today.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great. And we caught up before, Claire and I, off screen just to get ready kind of for today. So, yeah, I think we're going to have some good fun, I think, for today's podcast.
Looking forward to it.
So, Claire, we always ask people to give a brief description of their career, where they've got to today's date. Would you mind just sharing with our audience a brief description of your career so far?
Yeah, pleasure. So, actually, I say pleasure, not always that easy to talk about yourself and your own background, but here we are. I left school after doing my A-levels and fully intended to go on to do a degree to be a teacher, actually, at that time.
Right.
So I wanted to be a primary school teacher, teaching PE and sports education to children. So fully intended to do that. Quite quickly after my A-levels, got into some work and started doing well, earning some money, getting a bit of freedom. And definitely recognised then the amount of debt that university can get you into. And so decided, do you know what? I'm going to carry on pursuing the work that I'm in. So I did. One thing led to another, and I ended up in admin roles, really, in HR quite quickly, and realised that it was an environment that I enjoyed, and working in roles that supported employees and individuals felt good, and it felt kind of connected to what I had planned to do in my teaching career. So I kind of just went with the flow, really, and had lots of opportunities come my way, which I took full advantage of. And I spent probably the most significant organisation early in my career was Home Retail Group, which was at the time Argos and Homebase. I worked there. I was lucky enough to work with some great managers there, who gave me the opportunity to study while I was in my role. So I did my certificate in personnel practice. I did my went on to do my postgrad diploma, so my CIPD, and moved into quite senior roles. And then following my time there, I went on to a great organisation, TJX, which is TK Maxx and HomeSense, as we know it, which is a really successful global organisation with an incredible model, which is quite unique. Loved that organisation, not least because I love fashion, I love homewares, all of that stuff. So it was a real joy to work with their buying and their merchandise population in a HR capacity. Loved it there. And wouldn't have left, I don't think, if it wasn't for having my son Frank while I was there, that then kind of required more flexibility from what I was able to get in that role at that time, pre-COVID. You know, people were working in the office. Presenteeism was really important, and particularly in a HR role when you're working with teams of people. So I decided to take a role that was closer to home. And ended up in Volkswagen Financial Services, which is another fantastic organisation, but in a very different industry. So learned a lot there, and worked quite differently with my client groups in that role. And then moved into a role at Volkswagen Group, which is where I spent kind of three or so years. And that was the last role I had in corporate organisation before I decided to take the leap and set up my own business, which I did in 2022 as a coach and HR consultant, which was a bit of a leap of faith, but thanks to good connections and opportunities, I made that step and haven't really looked back. So I'm in my second year now of running my own business. I've been really lucky to experience working with lots of different organisations across, lots of different industries, including healthcare, which I hadn't previously worked with, which has been really interesting. And just continuing to kind of grow, learn, and take every opportunity that comes my way. And I guess that's why I'm here today as well. On this podcast, which is another thing that I've not done before. So really excited to give this a go and share a bit of my journey with people.
And I love the bits already that you said, and I was just resonating with me about grabbing opportunities. and taken advantage of it, because there's organisations offer a lot of things, don't they? So if you took even the poorest organisation, they're still going to offer some things to do or that kind of part. But I really love the bit about grabbing hold of and taking advantage, because there's some good stuff out there for companies that are offering, aren't there?
Oh, incredible. And I think, you don't always, I think the way companies communicate about what's available isn't always great. So I think as an individual, one of the things I've definitely learned is to be clear about what it is I want, or what sort of things I might be interested in, and kind of put that out there so people are aware, so that, you know, they can kind of connect the two things, and opportunities can be then put in front of you. And, you know, going out and getting things to the point where if you see something happening, asking questions and saying, well, what's that over there, and how can I get involved, or, you know, what could I do that might help me in that same space, so that, because I think a lot of people kind of sit and wait for their manager to develop them. And I think, you know, that's kind of historically where we've been, haven't we, in organisations. You know, managers develop their people, and actually I think we've learned it's not the case at all, and people have to take accountability and responsibility for their own development. And your manager should totally support you and open doors for you and challenge you and all of that wonderful stuff. But it's up to you to drive your development in whatever direction that might be. So definitely that's a learning for me through my career, and something that I'm continuing to kind of figure out. But there's enormous opportunities. And you know, it's lots of internal stuff, but also external opportunities. So there's that piece around you know, finding what's going to work for you, whether that's directly in your organisation or outside of your organisation, because there's so much out there available to people.
And it's really fascinating that I spoke to someone recently, and I said, how much money do you spend on your development each year? And it was zero, literally zero. And I said, well, how much do you spend on holidays or going out or doing, or, you know, Netflix or TV or whatever it is? And it was thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. And I said, who's more important? And it was just that question that they went, I'm actually not putting any importance on my development, etc. So you do have to spend a bit of money for development and skills, but it depends where you want to go. And there's great stuff in companies, but it's also great stuff out and about, as you and I know throughout our careers. But I think it's fascinating what people spend on their own development versus a holiday or a trip or a meal or whatever, that kind of stuff. I think it's fascinating.
And I totally agree with you, actually. And even me, you know, I will stop and think twice about investing in something that kind of is for my development, because it feels quite indulgent. You know, but I have honestly got to say, anything that I've ever invested in for my own development, it's never been a regret. You know, I've always been able to use that in some way or another. And there's been lots of big investments, and I've been lucky enough, as I said, to be sponsored through organisations, which is another fantastic thing as an employee that you can benefit from. But one of the biggest things I invested in probably for myself was coaching. Ironically, and that had a really big impact on me and my career. And I had that coaching during COVID, and is probably one of the things that gave me the bravery and the courage to set up my own business, which is something that I've kind of always wanted to do. So so big advocate for investing in yourself, definitely.
Now, I asked Claire today to come on to talk about authentic leadership from her experience and a background that Claire's worked in. So Claire's been given 7 questions in advance, so just a bit of prep time from that point of view. So Claire, if you went back when you were growing up, who inspired you? What leader or person inspired you when you were growing up?
So I did, when you gave me this question, I struggled with this, and I thought, it's really interesting that I'm struggling with this. And I think it's probably because I don't think I've ever really stopped and reflected on that. And I think there probably were a number of people that inspired me and also influenced me, of course. But really weirdly, one of the characters that I kept sort of coming to in my mind was Mary Poppins.
Oh, wow.
Of all people, of all characters. And I don't know why. And I think it's because she is you know, she's magic first and foremost. So that's really cool. But aside from that, she's really assertive, and also sensible. But she's got that balance with compassion and care. And that just, I found that really inspirational. You know, she was able to kind of stand on her own 2 feet, hold her own, you know, deal with the children, deal with the family, deal with everything that was going on, and was quite a force to be reckoned with. But at the same time, she had that real compassion and also a real sense of adventure. So she was able to kind of help the children seek out adventure, but also help them figure out where their limits were. And I've never stopped and thought about Mary Poppins quite in this way, but I started to analyze, well, why is it that I felt inspired by her? And it's all of those things. It's that real balance. And, you know, I'm naturally quite a compassionate, supportive person. But I'm also, I can be assertive, and I can, you know, stand on my own 2 feet and, you know, say what I really think if I need to, and challenge if I need to. And I think there's a real tendency to be underestimated if you're caring, supportive, smiley, happy, friendly, approachable. I think you can be underestimated, and I know I've certainly been underestimated in my career. So there's just something really cool about that balance between that and just having that assertiveness and that respect that definitely she has. And then other than Mary Poppins, definitely one of my secondary teachers came to mind, my geography teacher, who always had a smile on his face, and was clearly passionate about his subject that he taught, but made it fun, and above all, I think, was very much himself. So in his style of teaching, you know, he brought his whole self. He talked about his family, he talked about his experiences outside of school, and he kind of brought them into his teaching, and he was relatable, and he felt like, or it felt like, we had adult to adult kind of conversations rather than parent child or teacher child. So, and that really inspired me, because I remember vividly thinking, wouldn't it be nice to have a career and do a job where you can be yourself, and you know, you're happy, you enjoy it, and it's fun. I think that's probably where the idea to become a teacher came from. So I'd say they're the kind of reflections that I've had around that question.
But I think it's fantastic. I've never had Mary Poppins before, so that's the first. So I'm delighted. But do you know what? I love the bit there about when you said I reflected upon it and what characteristics did I like, etc. Because it's not always one size fits all. But I think the way you articulated it was beautiful about Mary Poppins. She was a strong lady, but caring and compassionate, and kind of those characteristics that. I was smiling when you were saying that. I'm thinking, I like things like that. There's someone where you know boundaries as well, and you know where you stand. And then I was thinking, when you were talking about, I was thinking, oh, school teachers. What school teachers did I like? And they were the ones that had fun. They were the ones that it wasn't just all fun. There was good learning, but it was fun. But they brought themselves in, etc. But they knew the boundaries as well, which I really liked from that perspective. So yeah, I think that's fascinating for today. So it's a good starter question that we've moved into there. And was there anyone else that you thought of when you were going through about who inspired you or anything? Because I know my mum was one of the key ones when I was growing up.
I did think about my parents. I made some notes. You know me by now. I like to prep. And I did make some notes, and I did put my parents, and I thought, you know, they definitely inspired me in lots of ways. And I think the main thing when I think about my career and how they might have inspired that is really the work ethic. So my mum and dad, you know, always worked really hard to try and achieve a life that they thought was a good life for us as a family. So me, my sister, my mum and dad, and it was a good life. You know, I had a great upbringing. I was very, very lucky. But my dad worked, in particular, they both did, but in particular, my dad worked very, very hard. You know, all the way up to retirement. And I remember vividly, you know, he always did overtime. He always worked weekends. You know, he was always at work. I can't remember ever him taking a day off if he was poorly or anything like that. And I think that's definitely inspired me in terms of, you know, if you want something in life, you go and get it and you make it happen. And you know, that whole kind of, you don't get something for nothing.
Yes.
And and I've definitely kind of taken that from
Yeah.
my parents for sure, and lots
Yeah.
of other things, but that
Yeah.
in particular.
And I think that's a great behavior, because that was the same upbringing that I had, was about you work hard to get where you want to be in life, etc.,
Yeah,
and you make your own way in life, etc., which I really believe in. But also I took back, my mum would always make sure my brother and I tried things.
yeah,
So she gave us the opportunity to go and say, well, go and have a go and see if you like it, and you can
yeah,
develop. And that really, I think, inspired me as a child, of doors opened and opportunities and learning, etc. And it took me out of my comfort zone by miles, but actually just opened doors. If that makes sense.
yeah. It really makes sense, and that really resonates with me as well, because they definitely did that, and I think that was partly why they worked so hard, was to create opportunity. So things like
Yeah,
music lessons or dance lessons, or
yeah,
whatever it was that me or my sister was like, oh, I fancy trying that. They would
yeah,
always find a way
yeah,
of giving us that opportunity to try it.
yeah,
And some things worked out really well, and we
yeah.
continued to pursue, and some things just weren't for us, and
Yes,
that was always okay.
yeah,
um so yeah, I think that's a really good point you make, and I think
yeah,
definitely reflecting now, that was something that's helped me a lot, and perhaps why I'm okay with kind of trying new
yeah,
things, and it's okay if it isn't my thing and it doesn't
yes,
work out.
yeah,
um
yeah. I think, and there's nothing wrong. And people go, "Oh, you failed in it." You go, "Well, it just wasn't mine. It wasn't my bag."
yeah,
That's okay.
yeah,
That's cool, isn't it? Sorry, I
yeah,
sounded quite trendy
totally.
there, saying that's cool. So,
You are
so
friendly,
how?
Stephen.
Yeah, how would you describe your leadership style? So if an alien landed and said, "What's your leadership style?" How would you describe it?
Oh, well, first of all, I'd have to figure out what language they spoke.
Yeah.
But no, I so definitely, I said earlier, collaborative is definitely kind of
Yeah.
key part of my style, and working with people and in leadership roles. Yeah, I'm always really keen to kind of work alongside people, and understand
Yeah.
what people think about something. Engaging people is really important, and I think through collaboration, that's a really good way.
Yeah.
And for building relationships, because relationships are really important to me. And building kind of long lasting, trusting relationships is
Yes.
really
Yeah.
key. um, and I think trust is really key in there, because if people are if you're trusted, then
Yeah.
people can really be themselves. And that thing, almost, we were touching on just a moment ago, about it's okay to kind of try something and fail,
Yeah.
in a trusting environment, without the judgment. You
Yeah.
know that you can do that, and you be supported, and there's
Yeah.
always learning along the way, so it doesn't mean you
Yeah.
can just keep failing at things.
Yes.
You need to be learning
Yeah.
some
Yeah. Yeah.
lessons along the
Yeah.
way, and doing things differently as a result.
Yeah.
But there's something about creating that environment that just enables that,
Yeah.
sort of trying and testing things out, and therefore kind of learning and
Yeah.
change and innovation and growth. All of those wonderful things come from that, so
Yeah.
that's really important to me. And definitely taking a coaching approach to leadership
Yeah.
is key. It's something that I talk to leaders about all the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of organizations are starting to think about how they develop a coaching approach to
Yes.
leadership, and sometimes even bigger than that, thinking about that culturally
Yeah.
in the organization. So it's definitely something I'm mindful of, and to some extent comes naturally, in terms of asking questions to
Yeah.
seek out, for individuals to kind of come up with their own
Yeah.
solutions,
Yeah.
and their way forward, because I definitely don't always have the answers.
Yeah.
And it's really important to remember that. And I think coaching enables you to get the best from everybody, and
Yeah.
really build on everybody's strengths. But I think it's something that is a work in progress, so
Yeah.
definitely I'm working on ensuring that I'm taking a coaching approach when it's appropriate,
Yeah.
um, and not jumping into that advice place, or telling or controlling.
Yeah.
And that's difficult. That's difficult to
Yeah.
do. So that's something I'm definitely mindful of, and continue to be, and work with lots of managers and leaders that grapple with that every day.
Yeah.
But the great thing is that we're talking about it, right? And
Yes.
we're trying to do something different to make a
Yeah.
difference in that space. So yeah, I'd say collaborative coaching approach, um, yeah, I'm definitely supportive, but just sometimes need to think about balancing that, because overly
Yeah,
supportive can sometimes be self-sacrificing, which
yeah,
means kind of, not necessarily following my path and
yeah,
kind of diverting where other people need me to. So that's
yeah,
something I'm also got an eye on.
yeah,
But yeah, I'd say that's my style of leadership.
yeah. And it's to follow on that, it's quite like my style is a bit of a reverse. So if you
Yeah,
took, so when I trained to be a coach and did my coaching diploma, I thought I was a good coach. And then I suddenly realized I was horrendous. And it was feedback, counseling, therapy. It was a mixture of everything
yeah,
in there. And I realized that I liked, from my personality style, from this profile and being a red personality, direct, straight to the point, let's move on, etc. If it's wrong, it's wrong. It doesn't matter. We'll carry on. But coaching taught me about empowering people, getting
yeah,
more ideas. And I suddenly realized that when people own their own solutions, the power of them going to do something rather than you giving feedback and direction, that they actually stand on their own 2 feet and they come up
yeah,
with loads of ideas, etc. But it's a richer discussion rather than just one-way traffic. That's kind
yeah,
of what I found from my point of view. And it was great then. We had better conversations with people rather than me talking, them listening, them go away and do something. Does that make sense?
yeah, entirely. Yeah. And it's really funny because coaching is like a light bulb moment
Yeah,
for a lot of people, where, and I think there are a lot of people in the world and in organizations in leadership roles that think that they're good coaches.
yeah,
And when they actually, if they actually learn about coaching,
yeah,
they would realize quite quickly that they're not.
yeah,
And it's tough. It's not easy, right? Because it's challenging some of the things that we've been brought up to believe.
yeah,
But you're absolutely right. I think coaching is, yeah, it's the best way to lead.
yeah,
But it's incredible how little people listen in
yeah,
life. And I mean, it's just human nature and it's how we've evolved. But
mm,
people don't listen very often, very well to
yeah,
each other. So sometimes when you start coaching or start leading
yeah,
in a coaching way, it's a bit surprising to people and a bit uncomfortable. It's a bit like, oh,
yes,
what else do you want me to say? you know,
mm, yeah,
you need to tell me the answer because you're the
yeah,
leader.
yeah,
So it kind of catches people off guard.
yeah. And I think that I love that bit about listening. That even in our mediation world, sometimes people say like, "I'm sorry," or "did," and people don't hear it, and we have to pick up as a mediator and go, "Look, did you just hear what that person said?" And they went, "Really?" Because they're not listening, they're already got their mind going forward to the next question or next thought, etc. So I think listening, and I read a really good book, I think by Nancy Klein, called Thinking Environment, and that
Yeah.
was great just to really quieten down, really listen to things and words and be present rather than jumping ahead. So I thought that was a really good thing, and I think it's a great spot because how often do people really listen? They hear but they don't listen.
Yeah. And how often do people lean into that space to talk when they're being listened
Yeah,
to? Because it's uncomfortable. And I think, you talk about
yeah,
Nancy Klein. I've read her book and done some work with her sort of think tank
yes,
coaching
yeah,
approach and that sort of thing. And it's a great way to kind of test that within
yeah,
groups. And you put a question out there and everybody has a certain amount of time to kind of
yeah,
to share their thinking, and everybody else is listening, and
yeah,
and that's all they're doing, they're listening.
yeah,
But the challenge is, of course, those people that are sat there listening are in their head thinking, what am I going to say when it comes to my turn? What am I
yes,
going to
yeah,
say? And it's
yeah,
battling that all the time,
yeah,
that human nature kind of to
yeah,
to think, what am I going to say? How am I going to sound when I say
yeah,
my thing? Rather than
yeah,
listening in order to then, and trusting actually that the thing that you want to say, it will come, it will
yeah,
emerge, it will appear.
yeah,
Like, trust your own
yeah,
brain to do what
yeah,
it's meant to do,
yeah,
and actually just open yourself up to that opportunity to
yeah,
hear what someone else has got to say, because who knows what it might spark, right?
yes, yeah. And I think I've definitely learned over the last probably 5 years about just that spark, that creation, listening to other people. I've done so much reading in the last 5 years compared to 26 years prior in my
Yeah,
career that
yeah,
I've just gone, oh, that's a really good idea. That's quite good. That's a thoughtful. That's different. So what would you say are the best traits? I know you've talked about collaborative, engaging,
yeah,
trusting. What would you say if you were looking at a leader in today's society? What would you say the best traits they should have or develop?
yeah. I think, I mean, one of the great things is that there isn't one size fits all in terms of leadership, is there? So that's quite reassuring and quite nice to know that we don't all have to go around pretending to be this perfect leader, because it doesn't exist, you know. So that's quite nice. But I think so therefore, I guess one of the really important things is self-awareness. So I think, a great leader is somebody who understands themselves and is on a journey of exploring themselves and learning more about how they can improve. And, you know, like you and I are talking about learning about coaching and learning about, you know, how to use it to get the best out of people and empower people. You know, it's continuing to kind of be open to new ideas, different ideas, and thinking about kind of what you think about that and how you respond to that and what does that mean for your own development. So I think being really self-aware and continuing that journey of development is really important. And as well as that, and I know it's a bit cliche because we're talking about authentic leaders, but authenticity, you know, being really who you are, which is really challenging. It sounds really easy, doesn't it, just to be yourself, but it's really not. And that's something that I've seen lots of times and I've experienced personally in organizations where people try to kind of fit in and be a certain type of way to fit into a culture. And so I think, you know, great leadership is when you are absolutely being yourself, and your whole life is kind of connected, integrated, you know, so that you can be the same person in all the different scenarios that you find yourself in. You know, of course, certain things are more or less appropriate in different circumstances, but ultimately, I think if you can kind of have that connectedness, and be authentic, then I think that's really important. And I think that and self-awareness kind of go hand in hand. And probably something about, you know, Brené Brown talks a lot about bravery and vulnerability, and definitely, you know, vulnerability is really important. So being able to kind of go, I don't know everything. And there are things I don't know, and saying I made a mistake, or saying, you know, I'm a flawed human being, because we all are. And I'm not perfect and I won't get everything right all the time. I think that vulnerability is really important. So that, you know, others understand that you're a human being too, and also it inspires them and gives them courage and bravery to be vulnerable too. And that's how we get the best out of each other, right? To kind of go, actually, let's be honest and let's just figure it out in the best way possible. So I think they're probably really key things. So what have I said? Self-awareness, authenticity, vulnerability. None of that's easy to do. But and I guess courage is really important, and it's different to vulnerability because it's about being able to kind of do the right thing or say the right thing, even if it's not the most popular thing, which is difficult because everybody wants to be liked, and it's not nice if, you know, you upset people or people don't want to go with you in the direction you're going in. So I think that's really important as well. It's just that courage to be able to kind of do the right thing, even if it's not the most popular.
And the things that you've come up with there, I just think, you know, they sound easy, don't they? About being authentic self. And you go, I want to be my authentic self. And then someone says something, you go, I won't say that. Because so that's really, but I think the more people I've worked with over the years that the true authentic self, or trying to be their authentic self, I've really kind of enjoyed working with them kind of people. I think courage is really, really important. Because I think doing a podcast, doing this, it's courage, it's brave. You've got, you know, step out your comfort zone, there's a bit of preparation, all this kind of stuff. But then the learning, the most times I've been courageous has been my best learning. If you take and you go, wow, I did that well, and it wasn't as scary, or I enjoyed it. What did I learn, and all that kind of stuff. So I think courageous, rather than wasting not your life, but going, but I prefer to go, well, let's have a go. And let's see where that goes with it from that point of view. I think vulnerability is a really interesting one, because there's good vulnerability to say, actually, I might have got that wrong, or I'm using vulnerability constantly, which people
Yeah.
don't kind of look up to that leader of keep saying, oh, I've got that wrong again, and you go, well, how many times are you going to get it wrong?
Yeah.
So I think that true vulnerability is beautiful because it really captures people from that point of view as well, isn't it? So I think they're fascinating. They're really good, and also that self-learning or self-understanding. I think it's good to go. So there's one person which I really like as a leader is Ben Francis from Gymshark. So I really like his style. He shows his flaws, he shows his vulnerability, but he surrounds himself with people that are better than him in different departments or different teams. And I really like that because he's self-aware.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Gymshark is doing so well in £1 billion industry. But the more you can go, I know what I'm good at, but I need other people to come in. Wow, that's powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I think, gone are the days, aren't they, of the leader that's got this big ego and is good at everything and knows all the answers to everything. And, they're just not the sort of leaders that are going to be successful kind of now and into the future. And I think there's still a lot of people out there who kind of aspire to be that kind of leader, because it is quite difficult to kind of break out of that cycle, if you like. But I think quite quickly they learn that that's not the way, and you've just got to be real but also be courageous. And it doesn't mean, like we're saying, it doesn't mean that you can just turn up and do whatever you like and say that you don't know how to do anything. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But it's about, leaning into what your strengths are and ensuring that you bring people on board that can complement that, and that you invest your time in developing others and providing opportunity for others and raising others up. So none of that's easy to do, but that's the type of leader I aspire to be, for sure.
I think we're akin there. I think definitely that point of view. So on the other end, so if we look at kind of work pressure or stress, etc., how do you cope with pressure or stress, or what do you use to alleviate pressure or stress at work?
It's an interesting topic, and something I think everybody's paying much more attention to now, really importantly, and it's great that there is more of a spotlight in this space, I think. But in terms of what I do, so I think balance is really important to be able to kind of get a good perspective on things, because I think if you're, I have been in roles before that have demanded a lot in terms of time and input, and have been quite high pressure, and it's quite easy to just immerse yourself in that. And I think if you never step out of that and breathe the fresh air, go for a walk, spend time with your family, whatever it might be, you lose perspective, and you lose the ability to kind of go to recognize, I guess, it's not life or death. Some people's jobs are in life or death situations, which I totally get. But, in my corporate experience, it wasn't life or death. And it was important to kind of be able to step back from that and go, right, okay, it's just an email, it's just a meeting, it's just a presentation, it's just, it's a implementation plan, whatever it is. And I can do this, and I just need to take a breath and step away from it for a minute. So getting the balance is really important to be able to get perspective. And I think how you get that balance is different for everyone. For me, definitely kind of putting boundaries around my work and my home life is really important, and that's of course become really challenging since COVID, because you're kind of working and living and doing everything from home, which is great on the one hand from a flexibility point of view, but also the kind of the worlds merge, and then you find there's no time to switch off from anything. So that's definitely a challenge. So kind of creating those boundaries where they're non-physical boundaries, but where you can go, right, at this time, that's when I'm gonna shut my laptop, and I'm not going to think about that again. I'm now going to spend time with my family, is really important. And exercise is really important for me. Something I'm struggling with at the minute is to stick to my routine when it comes to exercise. But when I manage it, it makes all the difference. It helps with perspective. It helps with, taking your mind off things that are bothering you, and refocusing, and just physically feeling better and healthier, and all of that stuff is really important. So definitely exercise, and holidays. Taking some really good holidays is always important. And it's funny because growing up, I think I took holidays totally for granted. It was like mum and dad were going to choose somewhere we were going to go, or my mum's Maltese, so I was lucky enough we would go spend time in the summer holidays in Malta with our family there. So it was always taken care of, and it was always a given we were going to do something, even if it was in this country. And but as an adult, I'm now much more intentional about, okay, where do I want to go, and what needs to be there for it to be a great break for us. So holidays are quite important to get that kind of family time together and unwind, relax, and that sort of thing. So they're the things I would say. I guess in the moment stress. So when you're in it, I think I lean on relationships. I think that what I was saying before about the importance of relationships, I think that's definitely something that I utilize as a support. Is that ability to go to somebody and say, hey, this is really hard, or I'm really struggling, or you know, I can't do it and I need some help, you know, whatever it is. That's always been hugely important to me, and helpful, really helpful, throughout my career, really.
And it's a couple of bits there totally resonated with me about boundaries. And it probably wasn't until my mid-30s I suddenly realised that boundaries were so important for work and home. So for my wife and I, and also work. And I think it was once a really good comment by my wife. We were on holiday, and they were the days of, you know, blackberries and all this kind of stuff. And my wife said to me, which I thought was a brilliant comment, and I really respect her for it. She said, "Are you on holiday with me or the blackberry?" What's and that resonated with me, like, and I think that they're the kind of things you need sometimes, that relationship with you to go, what's important, what's not important, etc., and that realization. I think the exercise bit is really good. But it's coordinating and planning, isn't it, to give you that kind of dopamine hit, that kind of that real feel good factor. And I think the other bit, relationships, are so important to say, look, you know, can I just bound some to like a professional mentor from that point of view, to say, you know, professional relationship, can I just talk this through? But there's no judgment, there's no criticism. It's just, can I just use you as a sounding board? It's so important. And actually to know that and find those people is so, it's rich, isn't it, to have someone that you can lean on from that perspective.
Yeah, it really is. And sometimes you're lucky enough to kind of be surrounded by people that you can lean on, and other times it's more tricky and there might not be very many, there might only be one. But I do think it's identifying that person that, you know, it's a safe space and you can have that conversation and seek that support, even sometimes if it's just a bit of a challenge, like, really, like, is that really causing you that much stress? Get a grip, love. You know, it's that even that is so helpful, because it makes you just go, okay, you're right, you know, or whatever it might be. So and just that boost sometimes as well, somebody saying, you know, I'm in your corner and you got this, and you've been here before and you can do it again. You know, it's just, that's sometimes all that you need. And you can get that from family and friends outside of work, of course you can. But sometimes to have someone in a workplace who knows you in work and knows what you can and can't do, and you know, and what's perhaps going on in that situation, that's also really, really helpful.
No, it's really good. And I think it goes down to people understanding what their stress points is or how they alleviate. We've all got different bits, but go and find them, go and be curious about what helps you or alleviate that point. And I think there was something I saw on LinkedIn recently, and I've got to get the phrase right, but in 20 years' time, will people remember the email you sent, or will your family remember? It's kind of that kind of link. Of, it's so important, of 20 years' time, your family is still going to be there, but the email won't be, if that makes sense.
Totally does. And there's I don't know, I'm going to get this wrong now, but British Airways or a company has done those adverts where they're really brilliant, they're like really direct, and they're like, get yourself on holiday, turn your BlackBerry off, otherwise you're going to die, you know, that it's that sort of thing. And it's like, nobody at work, you'll get replaced at work. There's another saying, isn't there, about you'll get replaced at work within a week. But you'll never be replaced in your family and with your friends. So it's that whole it's what's more important, and it's just that perspective thing, isn't it? So totally agree. I'm totally with you on that.
And I think, just to cover ourselves, there are other airlines that people can go on or use, or other airline adverts.
I might even have it wrong.
We just share that
today.
So if I took because we covered loads today, it's absolutely brilliant. What are you working on personally this year for Claire in 2024? What are you personally working on for yourself?
Lots of things. So continuing with this self-discovery, learning more about myself and how I can just be better. So definitely continuing to do that in lots of different ways. I've recently applied for my accreditation for my executive coaching with the Association for Coaching. So I've kind of come out of a period of like lots of study, lots of kind of applications, lots of evidencing my experience. So I've just kind of come out of that. So hopefully I'll get an email any minute now which will say that I've got that accreditation, which will feel amazing. And then really just to continue to build and develop my coaching and my business, and something kind of which is professional but also personal to me is Pilates, which I'm loving. I'd quite like to get trained to teach Pilates, because I think that's definitely going to help me do it more, which is going to help with all the things we've just been talking about in terms of balance and managing stress and that sort of thing. But I think it's quite complementary to the work that I do as well, so I'm sure there's a place for that to feature as well. So there's a few things, and I think continuing to read. I've been I think you said you've never kind of read as much and learned as much as you have in recent years, and I'm the same. So continuing to read books that kind of inspire me and make me think, that's definitely really important to me. So a number of different things really.
Well, fingers crossed for your email for your executive
I'll
coaching.
Keep you posted.
That'd be brilliant. Let me know. I'd really love to know. And Claire, how can people link with you, connect with you? What's the best way for people to kind of reach out to yourself?
So I'm on LinkedIn, like the rest of us. So you can just find me under my name, Claire Thorpe, on LinkedIn, and you can message me on LinkedIn and get in touch that way. Or you can email me at claire@vailbrookhr.co.uk to talk about anything from coaching to personal development needs to development needs within your organisation. So I work with individuals, with teams, and with organisations around coaching, but also leadership development and culture change, and everything in that sort of HR spectrum really. So I've done a lot with organisations on their modernising their policies and thinking about other aspects of their sort of people management approach that can enable the culture that they're trying to achieve. So there's a whole range of things that people might want to connect with me on. So please do. Look forward to hearing from you.
And I would say please reach out to Claire. She's wonderful to talk to, wonderful to work with from that perspective. Really, really super helpful, and hopefully people have seen, which I know today, the true Claire coming through, which is wonderful. So can I just say a huge thank you for coming on to our podcast today? Really, really appreciate it. I think we could talk for hours about the good stuff and positive stuff, so I think that's really good. But can I just say thank you so much for joining today, and fingers crossed for your executive coaching exam coming through.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. I've had lots of fun.
You're very welcome. See you, Claire. Thank you so much.
Thank you.